there's absolutely more opportunities than ever before for automation, and there's a lot of great tools out there. I think there will never be a replacement for that human interaction. It may move further down the funnel. There may be just more and more and more activity that's done before they get to the rep, but they're not going to sign on the dotted line. Technology is too expensive before talking to a human.
Everything leads to growth with the National Association for Sales Professionals. The Leads to Growth podcast with the National Association for Sales Professionals provides in-depth discussions sharing the best sales, prospecting, influence, and communication skills, as well as sales training techniques to take your professional sales career to the next level.
Hello and welcome to another Leads to Growth podcast for the National Association of Sales Professionals. My name is Christopher McCoy. Very excited to be here with y'all today. We have got a very special event here for you on this podcast today. Event, right? This is an event. There's more than two people, more than me in the room. It's an event for me as far as I'm concerned with this whole quarantine thing. But anyways, I've got two guys here who've just been having some great conversation on the topic of sales enablement. And I'll tell you, in my role at the National Association of Sales Professionals, I get asked all the time about sales enablement. And it looks different for every single person. There's not one blanket answer for sales enablement. And as I've been involved in this conversation, we're starting to implement some new things here at the association. I said, you know what? Well, I'd like to really, talk to somebody about this, but you often wonder, you don't know quite the right questions to ask, right? Because I'm not an expert, and assuming I know something can often get me in more trouble than assuming I know nothing. And so I decided to go in this with a beautiful perspective, assuming I know nothing. And so I talked to my man, Dan Redman, AKA the Pirate. We'll find out more about that later, who's been in sales and marketing for 20 years. And I said, Dan, who's the best guy in sales enablement? He's like, well, it's Matt. So we reached out to Matt and we're like, all right, let's put this thing together. So Daniel has been, listen, this guy's from OG. He's been around for a while, right? Involved in social sharing as an e-commerce environment at its inception. He founded recently Sales Enable, which is a sales automation company that helps small and medium-sized companies accelerate their prospecting results by leveraging systems and technology, which plays a lot into sales enablement, which we're going to hear a lot about from my man, Matt Cohen, AKA, I've nicknamed him the Doggy Daddy. And this comes from both of their bios. We'll talk about that later. But so all right, Matt, he looks like a young guy, right? But this guy has experience on experience in this industry. He's currently the sales enablement manager at Work Fusion, where he connects internal and external stakeholders to optimize enablement services for their customers, their partners, and their internal go-to-team markets. He was also the sales manager of enablement at Seismic. He was the first enablement hire and saw the company grow from 300 to 1,200 employees. So being in enablement at an enablement company was massive for him, and his expertise that he's carried along with him. He sits on the board of the Sales Enablement Society chapter of Boston, also co-founded the San Diego chapter before relocating. And today, like I said, I'm going to kind of take a step back and observe and listen and chime in when I can. But I really want these two gentlemen to really share with us about sales enablement, how they see it from their perspectives. And gentlemen, thank you for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. So I think, the best place to really start the story is first, I'd like to say that you structured this podcast the right way by having the gray-haired guy talk first. Typically in a podcast, you want to come right out with wisdom. That's the way to do it. Wisdom first, then you bring in the beauty later. So
I know how to set up a win.
You know how to set these things up, man. So really, to talk about enablement, I think you first have to go a little old school. I'm going to take you back to 2011, the year when the world was perfect, right? No, it wasn't. There was a lot of bad things that happened in 2011. But the thing that was great about 2011 is that it was substantially easier to earn new business. Data shows us that. So over the last 10 years, there's been a nearly 200% increase in the amount of touches that prospects feel in the sales process. And that's an explosion if you think about it, from going from 4 to 14 touches in 10 years. Where has the time gone? when you could just spin your little rotary phone and reach someone on the other end of it and ask a yes or no question about doing business with you. So
we might have to do a whole segment on what rotary phones are for part of our audience, but don't worry, we'll put that in the notes, y'all.
Again, gray hair, unique perspective. So in that time, what we've seen is two competing forces in sales, where you have the amount of things that an SDR or person can accomplish in a single day. And there's some figures around. I think for an SDR, it's like 94 revenue generating tasks that an SDR can complete. On the other side, there's the amount of touches required increasing on a pretty dramatic clip year over year. So you can see the tasks piling up year over year for SDRs. And what does that eat into? That's lead volume. So it's become increasingly more important to look at time as like an anchor for sales, and also path optimization, understanding the path, understanding how someone gets from A to Z. Like, whoa, it's taking all these touches to convert new business. We better take a close look at like what we're putting in front of prospects each and every time they see us, hear about us, think about us, or we're potentially losing deals that we could win. So that's kind of my perspective, like what sales has, the corner that we've turned and what sales has become. And the solution in a lot of instances is adopting sales enablement, which has seen a sharp increase over the last 5 years. And I'll let Matt tell us a little bit more about what that really means.
Awesome. And just to put a little pushman there too for Matt, I love the idea that like this was a need that's been developed for a long time, right? There's been known relationship challenges between CFO and CSO and really supporting this. And then as technology changes, as quarantine, as communication changes, this new area has evolved, right? And it's expanded and grown throughout this time. And so I love how it is a solution to a problem as well. So Matt, share us your perspective on how you've seen this thing develop.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I have used a rotary phone. I'll have you know. Yeah, so I got this question a lot when I was at Seismic. Obviously, I had to be very involved in the enablement community, and everyone's trying to figure out what is enablement, particularly what is sales enablement, because that's where it started out for that audience. I always focused on three things. Because these were, regardless of how many definitions there are, and there are a lot of them, I saw three common categories, and that is process, tools, and there are more tools than ever before. I'll get into that, and training, right? So training is the first thing everyone thinks of. A lot of times organizations had sales training before they ever had enablement, when they realized it was a much broader responsibility than just training alone. And that's a huge amount of responsibility, right? And to complicate things more with that broad range, you also have a lot of vendors that are positioning their solution as the end-all be-all. It does everything you could ever need to be done as an enablement professional. And any enablement practitioner will have you know that there are a lot of different tool categories that have to come into play for you to be able to really optimize your results in enablement.
So wait, hold on. You're saying sales enablement isn't just a program that I run that does everything for me?
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, there's, and I could rattle them off. There's sales engagement, there's LMS, there's conversational intelligence, there's content management, right there. That's just to name a few. There are more tools than ever before, but that also means there's more opportunities than ever before to track leading indicators, right? KPIs, measure success, and tie them to revenue. So there's more opportunity than ever before. Enablement often falls prey to being, especially when it's an army of one, the people who just put out fires all day. They're running around putting out fires, right? Well, to avoid that, to avoid the tragic story you hear of no one realizing what enablement does until the person leaves and it all falls apart, you have to prove value, right? So you have to correlate those leading indicators to lagging indicators like revenue, of course, right? Or attainment. So, the background, when you look at kind of where we've gotten to where we're at today with enablement, sales enablement really came to be because of an increasingly complex sales cycle, right? So Dan kind of alluded to this, but there's more noise now competing for buyer attention than ever before. There's more buyers involved in purchase decisions than ever before. So we have to break through, and there's a lot of solutions trying to help organizations do this. But really, there's no substitute for sellers being experts on their solution, on their market, on the industry they operate in, right? You see more sellers than ever before from STEM backgrounds, from technical backgrounds, especially when you're talking about in SaaS. So it's not necessarily the loudest or most charismatic, extroverted person who is the top performing rep, right? Buyers have more information than ever before available at their fingertips. So they're going to have a perspective. By the time they talk to the rep, for better or worse, they'll have a perspective. And the rep needs to be able to either go with that perspective if they think it's the right one that's going to fit their use case, or change course, right? And so that requires really being, you hear this trusted advisor. Well, to be a trusted advisor, you really have to be an expert in what you do. And to accommodate that growing number of decision makers, that's why we're seeing this move toward revenue enablement. We're seeing customer success involved in enablement. We're seeing marketing involved in enablement. We're seeing channel partners involved in enablement. Customers, right? You mentioned our team at Work Fusion, the breadth of the services we offer. There is a need for consistency throughout the buyer journey to counteract that complexity buyers are dealing with. They don't, wake up one day and say, hey, now I'm talking to customer success. I was talking to sales the other day, or, hey, I feel like moving from stage 2 to stage 3 today. They're just talking, to your organization. And so you need to have a consistent message, and everyone, that's buyer facing needs to be an expert. And so that's where I really see the future, which I'm sure we'll get into more as we move forward here, but is buyer enablement. Right? It's customer, it's partner, it's revenue under one function to optimize the buyer experience end to end.
Matt, you mentioned tools, and I immediately get aroused when people start talking about sales tools.
Good. So, that's why I mentioned it.
So forgive me if I seem a little bit on edge. It's just because I'm extremely aroused. But I will say, like, a personal anecdote. So I spoke to a sales manager from your old company, and she mentioned to me, I was just interviewing to really understand enablement better at the time. This was a couple years back, and find some firm footing and ground to launch my own company. And one of the things that stuck with me that she said was that her best salespeople, her highest performing salespeople, were her best writers. And I found that to be so interesting, because you would never think about, true writing skill and writing communication as being the core source of sales performance 10 years ago, 7, 8, 9 years ago. But now it is. I'm curious how looking at the sales enablement role, either in a company or, as a kind of like standalone function. Let's be honest, Matt. Is it just a glorified IT nerd that's looking for all the glory? That it seems like sales enablement managers, directors just sprang up from nowhere. What do you see as like the typical background of a sales enablement person?
Well, there isn't one. That's the one thing that I've noticed, is that people are, and I think that it makes sense when you've seen this move toward revenue enablement. People in enablement are coming from all over buyer-facing roles. They may have marketing backgrounds. They may have customer success, solution consultant backgrounds. They may have, more often than not, it's an AE quota-carrying background. That's the traditional one. But, they're really coming from all over the place. And I think the common thread, if I could find one, is that they've had experience in considering the needs of the buyer. And so they may have an understanding of one part of that journey that they bring to bear. But I agree with what you said, Dan. I think that it's more important than ever before to bring personalization to the table. I mentioned the importance of being an expert. Reps need to have a personal brand. That goes beyond just being an expert once they're on the call. To be viewed as a credible advisor, they need to have that brand, like on LinkedIn, for example. There's no coincidence that Seismic acquired Grapevine 6 last year, right? That now they have this solution, Live Social. Social marketing is more important than ever, because of the fact that when you consider that end-to-end cycle of, okay, marketing is orchestrating campaigns, then we get into the sales enablement side and we're getting content to the seller to then deliver to the buyer. Well, how do you get that content to the buyer sooner, right? It's social media. That's the most powerful way. And you have to have an opinion. You have to be able to personalize that message really early on in the cycle. And so now we're really seeing the prevalence of that too. You mentioned the importance of being a good writer. That's very important.
I've started dripping out my TikTok dance videos within sequences because I'm finding that social influence element is just critical.
Yeah.
Turning in new business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're not all blessed with the natural ability that you have, but if you have it.
I just want to make a point to that too. Like, as funny as that is giving people the tools to allow just people to be unique and stand out in a simple way. It makes such a beautiful impression on me when someone does not step into that same template automated bananasness that just blurs, that steamrolls me with information and attacks on all different multi-channel fronts, but somebody who somehow gets a message in my LinkedIn and it's like 5 words and then they make a comment on something that I posted recently. I'm like, wow, that person really, it's something that catches me funny. It's so unique and special. I really appreciate those.
Well, and it has to be genuine, right? Because we have been trained. We receive, hundreds, it seems like I receive hundreds of emails and messages on social media from vendors every week. I mean, it's just out of control. But the ones that stand out are not the ones that are like, hey, Matt, I'd like to connect. And then a day later, they're selling the product, right? They are they're mentioning something that they noticed on my profile or a recent move. I had a BDR reach out to me like 3 days into my new job. And he congratulated me on my new role. He mentioned what I had been doing at Seismic and what I was doing now, how that would be different, how their solution would help me in that transition. I was like, man, I'm not 100% ready to have this conversation yet, but when it's time, you're going to be the first person I reach out to because you nailed it. I mean, it was just so well done, right? Because I could tell it was genuine.
Personalization at scale is right now, I feel like, the Wild West. That's where a lot of like tool development is moving in that direction. A lot of even like sales related AI seems to be in that space. And I think that there's even more to come on that. I've been experimenting with some really crazy stuff, as you probably have too, Matt, that voice emulation that you can sort of adjust and tweak at scale. And suddenly you've got 5,000 unique messages all in your voice, and you've only recorded one message. Video using like deep fake technology to produce sales videos and being able to edit those on the fly. That stuff is largely here, barely here, but here and ready to be adopted. And it's going to be exciting how that stuff further develops. But you can essentially, I know this is a controversial thing to say, but you're essentially going to be able to eliminate large swaths of prospecting for automated tools in the coming years, which is both exciting and scary. And who knows what the future will bring.
Yeah, I think though that there's absolutely more opportunities than ever before for automation, and there's a lot of great tools out there. I think there will never be a replacement for that human interaction. It may move further down the funnel. There may be just more and more and more activity that's done before they get to the rep, but they're not going to sign on the dotted line. Technology is too expensive before talking to a human, right? And messing with all those kind of intangible topics that often come up.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, in the tools I mentioned earlier, right? There's more tools.
Don't say that tools were too loud, man.
I know.
It gets me crazy.
I'm trying to get you. I'm trying to
get me hyped, man.
You know, that means there's also a lot of opportunity for the rep, because the rep, I've talked to reps, and sometimes they perceive like, man, everything I'm doing is being tracked now. It's like just out of control. I was like, well, yeah, but 9 times out of 10, you have access to that same information. How are you using it? You can also see that information. How are the top performers on your team running calls? Do you have Gong, something like that, or Chorus, or one of those solutions? Use it. Get in there, right? It's not just managers that have access to that stuff. That's what puts you ahead.
You're keying on something that I've heard as an objection to automation before, which I think is really interesting. But I've had companies tell me they're afraid that if they introduce automated tools, then their sales force will be lazy, and they will stop completing tasks that they should, expecting the robots to do the work for them. And you know what? Like, there's a small portion of me that somewhat agrees with that, but on the other side, I almost feel like we're looking at prospecting as being too much of a brute force effort, right? Like, complete all these tasks. That's how you do a sales. And I think that to truly like take a leap in automation to a place where we can automate big pieces of the puzzle, we have to rethink it. It's not about brute force. It's about understanding what the role of an SDR really is at its basic part. On our side, it's generating leads and revenue, right? That it turn into revenue. But the service that an SDR provides is different. The service is idea introduction and idea presentation. And how else would this person know about my widget if I didn't call them 38 times over the last 20 days to update their extended warranty on their vehicle? Like, there's no other way. So I think if we look at that and say, okay, it's idea presentation, we can automate that. You might even be able to do it inside out, where AI assists buyers in understanding their gaps and challenges, takes in and absorbs pitches and presentations and exports that into best case scenarios for buyers. Just off the cuff, but there's scenarios out there that like could change the way we think about selling.
One of the things that comes to my mind on this is, I would, with all the tools, with how unique every business is, how unique every customer is, with where we're going, and with also the special skills within each company, it seems like this sales enablement is the ultimate consultative sale, because you truly have to go in and ask the right questions to understand. Because I mean, too much video is too much video, too much automation is too much automation, and so I think it's really understanding where the strengths are and like going through that. So is asking questions a huge part of what y'all do when deciding what pieces to use or what tools to use? I mean, because it seems like there's always I get a video every day. It says, here's your name. We're going to open it. And the stats say everybody uses video, tears the doors off. Okay, oh great. But now if I use video all the time, like maybe I'm reaching the C-level executives. They don't want to see, little Chris with a video on here, maybe as much, or maybe I'm going to, it seems to be unique for the type of business. And so questions seem like a big part of what y'all are doing or need to do.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I think of it this way, like, I don't have a decade plus of quota carrying experience. If I would lose all credibility with my reps, if I came in and I said, hey, you have to do XYZ tasks to be successful, they'd be like, shut up, get out of here. Right. But I've studied the game. a lot more than most people, right? So I'm able to say, hey, I've seen this work. And if I'm evaluating new tools, the first thing that I have to do, I view enablement as the voice of sales. Everyone talks about voice of customer. Enablement has to represent the voice of sales. It's really important to get their feedback and represent their perspective cross-functionally. If you're not advocating for your sellers, you're not doing your job, right? You shouldn't just be telling them what to do. You are you're the bouncer. I've heard that example used a lot, and I like it. For communication, sales is flooded with information just like buyers are externally. And so you have to figure out, what matters to them, what tools are actually going to be impactful, get their perspective on those solutions before you go about just buying them and pushing them on them, because that's not going to go well. And you need to be really selective about what they're exposed to be effective. So yes, asking questions is huge and getting their perspective early on.
And I love how you said the right thing, because I was just thinking asking questions, but you said, no, ask the customers the questions, right? Mm-hmm. Ask the salespeople the questions, because those are the two people involved in the transactions, and those are the ones that will know the real answers of how we can service each one of them better. Mm-hmm. Love that.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that one thing that we like to do is we have companies that we sort of investigate what their principles in selling are. And the root of a good automation and enablement or even an enrichment program is to somewhat stick to your principles as a company. And if you do that and you plug in automation to fill gaps and do, solve particular challenges, even if it's with CRM, then that's really like the core of it is, here's the type of company you are. Here's what like a mapped out successful sales path looks like. What gaps can we fill for you? What time investment things can we flip on its head? That's what we sort of look like. Not telling a company that to push out of their comfort zone to a certain extent.
I love that. One of the other things I always hear too is and I got a closing question for you guys here in a second, but I always hear engagement equals perceived value. There's all these software tools out there. I mean, I'm getting hit up by, just the video. I mentioned video a lot because Vidyard and BombBomb seem to have my number and seem to pop up on everything I'm doing right now. But we're taking steps to do this, but there's so many tools with these softwares, so many, there's folders, there's this, but if you're not using them, you're truly not engaging and getting the value. And God forbid I have 2 or 3 of these platforms that are kind of it seems like a lot of them kind of overlap each other as well. And whereas this one might do the same thing as this one, but when you use multiple, you kind of lose the value of using one platform that gives you that streamlined time-saving capacity. So I'm going to ask you one question before I go to my last question is, how do you, let's say I'm a new person, I've got a sales team that's finally hitting some numbers, and I'm saying, great, guys, I need to start making it better for my salespeople, making it easier for my salespeople, making sure that they're on the phone selling more often. What's one of the first things that I can do to take my first step into adding some tech or adding some tools within sales enablement? What's my first step forward in that process?
Yeah, I would say, I'm biased, right? I worked for Seismic.
Be biased, sir. Be biased.
But I have because of the fact that I was at Seismic, Seismic has relationships with vendors all over the sales tech stack. There's over 100 integrations with the Seismic platform, right? So it's absolutely not taking anything away from those other solutions, but I do believe that having a content management system is key because of the fact that I've talked to enough organizations that don't have it. And when the resources, when the information, when the knowledge that your sellers need lives all over the place in all these different systems, and it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, right? How can they do their job in that scenario? And so, I would extend that not only to content management, I would say LMS is really key too, right? A place for them to learn what they need to learn, particularly for onboarding when they're new, but also from continuous development. They need to be able to find that information. And I mentioned the other ones earlier: sales engagement, conversational intelligence. I think those are really important, but those are the first two: content management, LMS, that I say that need to be addressed first, and then the other ones should be after that.
Yeah, similarly, get your house in order first. Build the plumbing. We've even over the last year introduced people to CRM for the first time, that are companies that are relatively successful, that are still selling. Man, build your house. Build your house. We'll put the furniture in later. We're gonna get a hot tub for you, but let's build the effing house first.
Yeah, I think Dan makes an important point. I was kind of taking for granted CRM being in place. If you don't have CRM, forget what I said. Like, get a CRM. You need a source of truth for customer information. Absolutely.
I like that.
Yeah.
A source of truth for customer information, right? You can't do anything with data if you're not collecting any data. Yeah, that's great stuff, guys. All right, so I'm kind of tipped off this last question by Daniel saying, Dan, that the best skill for his salespeople was writing, right? And I've also been reading Robert Greene's Laws of Human Nature and how cycles are changing. I remember just a year or two ago, we were using long form emails that I needed a PhD to write in order to get a CEO's attention. Now we're writing, less than one sentence, little blurbs to get them to engage. Everything's changing. The tech stacks are changing. The resources that we have in order to substitute those not great skills. I mean, salespeople, you just used to rely on, the gift of the gab, right? The tongue. That was it. Now you don't need that. You need to be knowledgeable, right? So there's all these different skills and support for us to be automated, to be everywhere we need to be. What, as a salesperson, we look across the board, what is the one skill that salespeople need to develop in order to move into that next generation of really leveraging all the enablement technologies that are available for them in the future?
Yeah,
I think there are a couple things, Chris. So I actually think that there's somewhat of a resurgence in conversation and relationship building in sales. I think we're somewhat beyond the point, and it still is out there, where companies are telling salespeople, buy or die, buy or die. It happens, and companies still work on 30-day timelines where they have to turn in a certain amount of deals. But because we have these extended long sales cycles, because we have high touch points to earn business, relationships are so important, and conversations are so important. And I think those are the cream of the crop salespeople that can take a small reply, a small engagement, and turn it into a relationship. That's a critical skill. And adopting those principles and using it at top of funnel as well. So thinking about people as people again, not just, can I light this entire forest of leads on fire and hope a few wounded rabbits hop out?
Love that. What do you think, Matt?
Tools. No, I'm kidding. I just wanted to get Dan excited. I think Dan mentioned one earlier, and that's the importance of storytelling. Seismic has done a good job aligning themselves with the storytelling platform over the last year. I thought that was a brilliant move for positioning, because it's more important than ever for sellers. The point that I'll make, though, in addition to that, is adaptability. I think we're past the point of efficiency being the end all be all. I think too many vendors talk about driving efficiency. Efficiency to me is kind of like an industrial age term, right? Like driving efficiency. You need to be adaptable. You're not going to keep up with the pace of change these days. It's absolutely impossible. And really what that means day in and day out is having a growth mindset. Learning, being okay with failure, quickly recovering, bouncing back. You never stop learning, right? That should never stop. So that's the main thing I would point to.
I love that. And that speaks to the expert who's been there for successful and doesn't sit still and just rely on his his high rewards this year. He continues to grow and evolve, or she continues to grow and evolve. Also, the new person who's moving over into sales for the first time, maybe, and is like, oh, I'm not tech savvy. Well, you have to have a growth mindset and start learning all these new tools so that you can evolve and be successful. So I love what you both said there. And Dan, I'm going to hear what you said is, really rapport and an external focus on my customer, right? And I think that's how you have great conversations, build great relationships, not just focused on what I can get. And then Matt, the same thing you said is also, it's in that internal motivation, right? Being internally motivated and externally focused. Because when I'm externally motivated and internally focused, everything that happens in the world changes me, as opposed to when I'm internally motivated. When the world changes, I adapt and flex with it and grow and evolve. And that's not to toot our own horn, but that's what we do at NASP, y'all. And that's why I see us in sales enablement so beautifully tied together, because we teach internal motivation. We teach behavioral transformation from the inside out, so that people have the confidence. They're not looking for it from somebody else around them. And then when the world changes around them, they already know what they need to do because it's been in here the whole time. And I think that behavioral transformation from an externally motivated to an internally motivated person is going to see the most successful salespeople in our future. And guys, I honestly, this has been as much fun as it has been educational. And so I really appreciate you guys and the time. I'd love to do this again here in maybe another 3 months and continue the conversation about sales enablement, because I know it's going to continue to evolve, and maybe we can start bringing some specific tools and stuff to the conversation. But I really appreciate y'all time. I appreciate your humor, and also just the fact that you came here out of your own time to give some value to our awesome NASP audience. We appreciate that as well. We know those who give receive, and so we're very grateful for y'all. All right, y'all. So y'all know what to do. This is our podcast. Go like, subscribe, share the thing, review it, because we're great. And why wouldn't you, right? Only if it's 5 stars. If it's not 5 stars, wait till we get to 5 stars, then review it. But definitely click the subscribe button. Check us out on NASP.com or anywhere you get your podcasts. And we'll see y'all for the next one. Thanks a lot.